U.S. Term Limits is proud to announce that State Senator Erin Tobin is our new South Dakota State Chair. Erin is a fifth-generation South Dakotan businesswoman and medical professional who will be spearheading our efforts in the Mount Rushmore state. Hi, I'm Holly Robichaud, and this is breaking news on term limits. In our last episode, I talked about how we have a new state chair in Texas, Brandon Herrera. We're pleased to have him on board. He recently wrote an op-ed that was featured in the Beaumont Enterprise. One of the most compelling points he wrote was, term limits has become the most popular bipartisan issue in the country. A recent Pew Research poll showed that 87% of Americans, regardless of political affiliation, support congressional term limits. Yet, despite this overwhelming support, Congress refuses to act on congressional term limits. Yet, last year, Congressman Ralph Norman's resolution that would have set term limits for the House of Representatives at 3 terms and the Senate at 2 terms was defeated by a committee vote of 19 to 17, despite having more than 100 co-sponsors. Simply put, term limits would not only transfer our do-nothing Congress into an orderly legislative body that would represent the will of the people because it constitutes the day-to-day American citizens. He also was interviewed on KXLYL radio in Brownwood, Texas, on why congressional term limits is so popular. Brandon's doing a great job already for us.
Behind the curtain in politics is you find out a lot of our country is run by 25-year-old interns, and that's really the scary truth of it.
All right, so let's talk about this. Brandon Herrera is the group called U.S. Term Limits, and obviously you want term limits across the board, just for Congress. What's the focus here?
The main focus right now is getting term limits instituted for Congress. We have them for the presidency, which is just 4-year terms, so you're limited to 2 4-year terms. But meanwhile, in the Senate, something that has a great deal of control of this country, you're allowed to have as many 6-year terms as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of extreme considering the disappointment that the U.S. people have in Congress right now. The approval rating is through the floor. A lot of people are asking for term limits, but with an approval rating that low in the free market, you would have been fired ages ago. But for whatever reason, incumbents have a massive advantage, almost a certainty of reelection. Mm-hmm. And that's the system that's completely broken.
It's something like 98%, I believe, right? If you're an incumbent, you have a 98% reelection rate, and you go, oh, well, that's because they're doing such a good job. Really? Because you've got a 36% approval rating. How is that possible? Can you explain in detail, maybe, Brandon, how the deck is stacked if you're an incumbent?
Sure, absolutely. Incumbents have access naturally to, on both sides. This is a Republican and Democrat issue. They have access to the party money. They have the name recognition of already having run at least one election and having been in the news cycles. They just have a natural deck that is stacked in their favor, regardless of the job that they've done. I mean, you really have to mess it up or have ticked off some very powerful people if you're going to run as an incumbent and not win.
Yeah, and I think even like mailers and stuff like that, the taxpayers can pay for some of that stuff too. There's a whole mechanism behind keeping you in office, whether you're good or bad. I mean, look how long it took for Menendez to leave.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The party wants to keep, if it's a red seat, they want to keep it red. If it's a blue seat, they want to keep it blue. And they have a natural incentive as a party, even if they don't like you that much, to keep that seat for their team, if that makes sense.
And, of course, the biggest one of all, and no one knows more about this than Ohioans, and that would be gerrymandering.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, it's not something that can't be overcome. I mean, even Ohio, I believe, has its own term limits instituted for its state representatives. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about getting a citizens coalition together that's going to redraw the maps to make them fair. You're going to have a number of Republicans, equal number of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And, of course, the political class is crying about how awful this is going to be for democracy. But how awful is it right now?
Sure. And, I mean, there's an argument to be made there, but I don't think it's anything close to the argument, as far as the political system itself that allows money to play such a heavy part in it. Mm-hmm. Is that really democracy at the end of the day? When a vote can be bought and paid for, is that is that really the concern?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this from just the free market aspect of it, is okay, I hire you to do a job, you make all these grand promises, and then you fail miserably about it. And then you tell me in 6 years or 4 years how you're the only one qualified to solve these problems again. And can I get rid of you? No, you've kind of stacked the deck to prevent me from doing that. And, let's not forget, when you look at the greatest of all documents in this nation, it starts with the capital letters of "we the people," and I think there's a reason why they capitalize those first three words.
Yeah, absolutely. The entire point of our system of government was supposed to be controlled by the people,
Mm-hmm.
and when they stack the deck so desperately in their own favor, that's where sometimes we need to step up and rearrange some things. I mean, it's just like we did when we decided that we wanted term limits for president. I mean, we were having FDR roll into a fourth term, and we just decided together as a nation that was something that we didn't want to see moving forward. So we took action where Congress didn't. The states got together, and then that's when Congress actually stepped up and instituted term limits for presidency. And that's what I'd love to see happen again. I would really like to see that.
Because there was a huge movement in the states to do that back when we set term limits after FDR just kept running the table. And Democrats fought against that. And eventually they're like, okay, well, we read the writing on the wall. We've got to now turn around and actually do some legislation to at least craft it that's still favorable for us. And they do that all the time. They won't act on anything. And, we did that with marijuana here in Ohio. The people wanted it. They said, no. And finally it's like, okay, well, we'll do our own initiative. And as soon as that started rolling, they got together, the legislature said, okay, we'll come up with our own thing, which totally screwed it up. But that's what you wind up getting. To protect themselves.
Right. And that is the number one thing you can learn about politics, is that if you want a politician to do something, you have to force their hand. It's exactly what happened with term limits, like you mentioned, for presidency. That's probably what we're going to end up having to do again. Now, there are a lot of representatives and senators in Congress right now who have signed the U.S. term limits pledge. Mm-hmm. But in reality, to get things on the table and to get things moving, they're probably going to have to have the threat of the states doing it first, because if the states do it, then they don't have any control over it. So they'll want to keep that control. They'll want to keep their hand on the pulse, make sure that they can put in their own little policies, their own little parachutes and things, which to me is fine. As long as we end up with term limits, that is a generational win for Americans.
Support for term limits at all levels of government is growing, and initiatives for term limits are rising. In Skokie, Illinois, a term limits proposal will be on the November 5th ballot. It would limit the mayor, trustee, and clerk to no more than 3 terms in office. In Iberville Parish, Louisiana, the city council has put term limits proposal on the ballot that would limit city council members to no more than 3 terms. It's spreading across America. Momentum for congressional term limits continues to build nationally. 66 candidates for the state legislature have signed the U.S. term limits pledge in the past 2 weeks. A record number of candidates who support this pressing issue are winning elections, which is no surprise when polls demonstrate time and time again that Americans overwhelmingly support term limits. And a very special thank you goes to our pledge team who are collecting these on a daily basis. Now it's time for the corrupt politician of the episode. It's Virginia U.S. Representative Rob Wittman. Prior to being elected to Congress in 2008, Representative Wittman served in the Virginia House of Delegates. In 2021, Representative Wittman violated the Stop Trading of Congressional Knowledge Act of 2012. This is a federal conflict of interest and transparency law. Representative Wittman failed to disclose $60,000 of stock trades in Johnson & Johnson, Royal Gold Inc., and TJX companies. He must have just forgotten, huh? Congressional term limits can become a reality. We've got the momentum, we've got the support of the people, but we can't do it without your help. We need everybody pitching in. Please go to termlimits.org and get involved today. And be sure to share this program with your family and friends. This is Holly Robichaud for U.S. Term Limits Breaking News. I'll see you soon.